After showering that evening, as I stood before the mirror brushing my hair, I saw Kai again. The steam in the bathroom hadn't dispersed. In the mirror, she looked just as she did when she was alive, staring at me with large, sunken eyes. I staggered back, closed my eyes, and desperately stroked my belly, taking deep breaths. I'm 6 months pregnant. I don't want these hallucinations to scare the baby. When I opened my eyes, everything was normal. I let out a sigh of relief. As soon as I stepped out the door, the phone suddenly rang, its ear-splitting sound echoing through the quiet, spacious living room. I jumped in surprise, clutching my chest as I went to answer. I said, "Hello." On the other end, a man aggressively yelled, "Tell Kim Hong to pick up the phone." Slightly startled, I replied, "There's no one by that name here. You have the wrong number." The man almost roared, "It is this number. What are you pretending about? I know who you are. Your name is Han Lu, isn't it? Pass my message to Kim Hong. Don't think that just because you left the countryside and came to the city, I can't find her. I'm not to be trifled with. If I can trace the phone, I can trace the address. You all better watch out." After his fierce outburst, he hung up. Hearing the dial tone, I froze for a few seconds, then immediately called Dr. Kim. The over 10-second wait to connect filled me with extreme anxiety. Then, Dr. Kim's faint voice came through. "Lu," I called out. "Dr. Kim, where are you?" Dr. Kim said, "The train is delayed. I can't say when I'll be back. Don't wait for me, go to bed first." I said, "I just received a terrifying call from a man. I'm alone at home and I'm scared." Dr. Kim replied, "Was it a prank call? Some idle people just dial random numbers." I said, "But he knew my name, and he told me to watch out." Dr. Kim asked, "Really? What else did he say?" I said, "At first, he said he was looking for Kim Hong. I told him there was no such person." "Kim Hong?" Dr. Kim's voice was slightly louder. I asked, "What's wrong? Do you know this girl?" Suddenly, there was no sound from the other end. "Hello, hello," I called out. I didn't understand what happened. I hung up, about to call back, when the phone suddenly rang. I answered. It was indeed Dr. Kim. He said he had lost signal earlier. Dr. Kim said, "Tell me exactly what that man said, from beginning to end." I said, as soon as he started, he asked for Kim Hong. I said there was no such person. Then he told me not to pretend. He knew my name was Han Lu and said he knew Kim Hong came from the countryside to the city. He said if he could trace the phone, he could trace the address, and he told me to watch out. I asked, "Who exactly is this Kim Hong? You know this person, right? Also surnamed Kim, from your hometown?" The other end was silent. I said, "Hello, Kim Hong." Dr. Kim's voice came through. "She's my niece, my sister's daughter. I came back to handle her funeral and I felt sorry for the girl, so I brought her back with me. It was a sudden decision, so I didn't have time to discuss it with you. My sister's daughter, I hadn't thought about this." I asked, "How old is she?" Dr. Kim said, "She's in her teens." He added, "You need to rest. It was wrong of me not to tell you, but I've already contacted a boarding school and there's a spot available. I'll take her there tomorrow so she won't bother you." I said, I also asked, "So who was that man who called?" Dr. Kim said, "I think he's my sister's ex-husband. Otherwise, he wouldn't have my home phone number. He's probably angry because I brought Kim Hong to the city. But that person is just playing games. At most, he'll just scare people a bit. He's got the courage of a mouse, so don't be afraid." Dr. Kim told me to get some rest early. I hung up the phone and lay on the bed. Everything was silent, even the baby in my womb was quiet. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. After becoming pregnant, I became much more sensitive, always in a state of fear but unsure of what I was afraid of. I knew this wasn't good for the baby, so I tried to convince myself to calm down. For the baby, I had to be calm. I took out the medicine and ate it. The traditional Chinese medicine had a calming effect and could help me sleep better. I began to drift off. In my hazy dream, I heard Kai's voice again. She said, "Ms. Han, my fate isn't as good as yours. If I could do it again, I would still want to be like you." This sentence always appeared in my dreams. It was Kai's dying wish. After saying it, she jumped downstairs. I suddenly opened my eyes, my face drenched in cold sweat. Kai's incident had tormented me for 5 months. I couldn't go to work, couldn't even face anything outside. Even though Dr. Kim repeatedly told me that it had nothing to do with me and urged me to forget everything for the sake of the baby. I told myself the same, but the recurring dreams told me I couldn't. As a counseling social worker, I had guided Kai for 3 years. I watched her stop drinking and fighting, stop staying out all night, dye her blonde hair back to its original color, tie it in a ponytail, wear long dresses, get a stable job, able to sit quietly, read a book, and smile at me. Compared to the child in my womb, Kai was more like the child I had struggled to carry for 10 months. I had given this girl a new life, but in the end, she died. My hand was only a hand span away from her, but I couldn't grasp her. I watched her fall gently, then heavily. The sunlight was blindingly white. Her blood soaked the ground, but it wasn't bright red. It was a frightening dark, murky color, just like her eyes that couldn't close. In the darkness, I wanted to cry. At this moment, I suddenly heard a sound outside. Thinking of the phone call earlier, I immediately sat up, my nerves on edge. "Slow down, there are stairs here." Someone was speaking very softly, but I recognized Dr. Kim's voice. Dr. Kim was back. I remembered him saying he was bringing a girl with him. I turned on the small bedside lamp and got up, intending to help. As I pulled open the door, I saw them approaching the staircase landing. Dr. Kim was already going up. A long-haired girl followed behind him. She seemed to hear a sound, turned her head, and faced me. "Ah!" I screamed in terror, because even in the dim light, I clearly saw that the girl's face had no features. "Lulu," I opened my eyes and saw Dr. Kim's worried expression. "Did you have a nightmare?" Dr. Kim asked. I looked around blankly for a moment. I had been sleeping soundly in bed. "So it was just a dream?" Dr. Kim asked. "Is your stomach bothering you?" I shook my head and said, "When did you get back?" Dr. Kim said, "A while ago." I asked, "Where's your niece?" Dr. Kim said, "On the second floor asleep. I'll take her to school tomorrow." I asked, "Do you need my help with anything?" Dr. Kim said, "No, you go back to sleep. You're pregnant, I just don't want to disturb you." When I woke up again, it was 9:00 a.m. I walked into the living room. The floor-to-ceiling curtains had been drawn open, and sunlight streamed in, making the entire living room look very warm. On the table were fresh soy milk and egg tarts. I went to the kitchen, where Aunt Lai was busy. Aunt Lai was Kai's mother. I had guided Kai for 3 years. She had learned to accept everything again, except her birth mother. In the end, Kai chose to jump from the building where Aunt Lai worked. I understood why. It was because she still couldn't forgive her mother for abandoning her in an orphanage when she was young. I had no choice. That year, if I didn't put her in the orphanage, was I supposed to let her starve to death outside? That year, when I was counseling Kai, Aunt Lai told me this, the woman over 50 crying profusely in front of her own daughter. Kai, chewing gum, said dismissively, "How sickening. Is this an act? You watch too many soap operas." For several years, I watched Aunt Lai treat Kai with extreme caution and protection, having long since pleaded for her mercy. So when Aunt Lai, unemployed, came to me, I readily agreed. Of course, it was also because she was Kai's only relative. From the start, Dr. Kim opposed inviting Aunt Lai to be a part-time housekeeper. He worried that Kai's situation would continue to bother me, but his work was too busy, and I needed care. Aunt Lai was also very capable, so after my persistent insistence, he said nothing more. In the kitchen, Aunt Lai smiled and said to me, "Are you awake? This morning I bought snakehead fish. I'll stew fish soup later to supplement protein and calcium. You must drink more than 2 bowls at noon." I smiled, glanced upstairs, and said, "Did Dr. Kim and the girl eat breakfast before leaving?" Aunt Lai looked stunned and said, "What girl? When I arrived at 7 a.m., Dr. Kim seemed to have already gone out." I said, "Oh, that early." Aunt Lai asked again, "What girl are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, it's Dr. Kim's sister's child who came to the city for school. They probably went to school as soon as it was light." Aunt Lai said, "Dr. Kim has a sister? I've never heard him mention it." She added, "So, when Dr. Kim went out a few days ago, he was picking up his niece." I said, "Yes, that's right. Dr. Kim has never talked about his hometown. I only knew that his parents passed away long ago. I thought he had no family left in his hometown until his sister died, and he had to go back. That's when I found out he had a sister." After lunch, Aunt Lai carried the washed clothes and went pat-pat upstairs to the drying area on the second floor. I watched her go upstairs, and for some reason, I suddenly remembered yesterday's dream. The faceless girl in the dream made me feel completely uneasy. I put away the breakfast dishes and went upstairs. Upstairs was a small study room with a single bed inside. Kim Hong must have slept here last night. I pushed open the study room door. The sunlight was even more intense than downstairs. I squinted, looking around the room. Nothing seemed out of place. I sat on the bed. The blankets were neatly folded, with no trace of a girl having been there. The sunlight was so pleasant, leaning against the bedding, I felt a bit dizzy and sleepy. As my eyes half closed, I suddenly saw someone in front of the window. She stood with her back to me. It was a long-haired girl in sportswear. That silhouette felt incredibly familiar. Is that Kai? This wasn't the first time I'd had such a hallucination. Although this feeling frightened me, it also brought a pang of sadness. I was an orphan. My parents died in an accident many years ago. The first time I saw Kai, I thought of myself. The loneliness in her eyes was very similar to mine when I was a child. My care for Kai was like caring for my own childhood self. I often used to tell Kai, "You can be like me. You have to believe you can do it." Kai would smile at me. Outsiders saw Kai as a rebellious, street-smart troublemaker. But in my eyes, Kai smiled like a child. She just needed to be armed. When no one protected her, she could only turn into a hedgehog protecting herself. Now, Kai stood before me as if she just had to turn around and I could see her smile once more. So trusting of me, so reliant on my smile. The sun was brilliant. I whispered, "Kai." Kai slowly turned her head. I gasped in horror. It wasn't Kai. It was Kim Hong, Faceless. Before I could react, Kim Hong lunged at me. I wanted to scream but couldn't make a sound. Her cold, clammy hand gripped my throat tightly. We were inches apart. As our eyes met, I realized she did have features, but they were all decayed. Dimly and indistinctly, I saw her eyeballs were shrunken. Only 2 small holes remained on her pus-filled nose. I heard a sound from the distorted mouth of her lips, a sharp female voice. "This is my place. This is my place." I felt like I would faint any second, but as my throat was squeezed tighter and tighter, the pain choked me. My hands flailed instinctively but uselessly. Tears blurred my vision, obscured my sight. I thought I was about to pass out. Suddenly, the door was slammed open, and at the same time, I felt the grip on my throat loosen. "Help me," I cried out. "What's happening?" It was Aunt Lai's voice. I blinked hard a few times. In front of me was Aunt Lai. She was wiping sweat from my face. Everything in the room was normal. There was no third person. I said, surprised, "It's nothing, I just had a nightmare." Aunt Lai said, "What did you dream of to be so scared? Your face is white as a sheet." I said, "I dreamed of someone scarier than a ghost." Aunt Lai was startled. "Huh, this won't do. I heard that pregnant women are vulnerable and easily attract unclean things. No, I must go get a bodhisattva statue to worship in this room. This room, it's good, but it's too big and too few people live here." That evening, Aunt Lai lectured me for a while before leaving. I turned on all the lights, the TV, wrapped myself in a blanket, flipped through a book, and huddled on the sofa waiting for Dr. Kim. It was already 9 o'clock, but I didn't dare to sleep. I was afraid that if I fell asleep again, I would dream of that terrifying faceless person. Was it really just a dream? I couldn't really determine if that scene was so real. Moreover, when I showered, I actually found several reddish handprints on my neck. Could it really be, as Aunt Lai said, that I had attracted something unclean? I looked around. Dr. Kim had rented this villa after I became pregnant. On the day Kai's incident happened, I fainted. After waking up, Dr. Kim told me, "We're having a baby, but it's not stable." He found this place, although a bit far, it's by the mountains and river, suitable for recuperation. Dr. Kim said, "When I earn a bit more money, we'll buy this place, and the 3 of us will live together." 5 months into my pregnancy, during the ultrasound, we found out the baby was a girl. Dr. Kim was very excited, saying, "A girl is wonderful, she'll definitely be beautiful like you." He also said, "You don't know, I've wanted a child of my own bloodline for a very long time." He said, "Thank you, Lulu, really thank you." Dr. Kim was truly good to me and the baby, but this villa, as Aunt Lai said, was truly very large and so desolate that it made me feel uneasy. Just then, the door opened and Dr. Kim came in. Seeing me, he said, "Why aren't you asleep yet?" I said, "I was waiting for you. Why was your phone off?" Dr. Kim said, "Oh, the battery died." I asked, "Why are you so late today? Are there so many patients at the psychology clinic?" Dr. Kim snorted and said, "Yes, there are more and more people with mental illnesses these days." I could tell he was a bit displeased and asked, "What's wrong?" Dr. Kim said, "Nothing, I just remembered meeting a very savage patient today." I tugged at his hand. Dr. Kim smiled and said, "It's really nothing." He then touched my belly and said, "Is Daddy's darling daughter hungry? Does she want Daddy to make her a bowl of noodles?" We sat and ate noodles together. I asked, "Is your niece all settled?" Dr. Kim lowered his head, chewed his noodles and said, "Yes, I've done my best. From now on, it's up to her." Dr. Kim said that, as if he didn't intend to manage the girl later. I felt something was off, but remembering the nightmares I'd had for 2 days, all related to this girl named Kim Hong, I didn't say anything more. That night, Dr. Kim patted me to sleep like a child, and I actually slept very peacefully. The next morning, Aunt Lai actually brought a bodhisattva statue, saying she had prayed for it early in the temple. She lit incense but was afraid the scent would be bad for me, so she asked me to stay a bit further away, then she placed the incense for me. Bodhisattva bless mother and child in peace, in peace. All morning, Aunt Lai kept chanting. I smiled and said, "All right, Aunt Lai, Bodhisattva knows your sincerity." Aunt Lai looked at me and suddenly said, "Let's give the baby a nickname so when I pray to Bodhisattva I can mention her name." I said, "Okay, a nickname is a good idea." Aunt Lai said, "It's autumn now, how about Little Thurthur?" I said, "Little Thurthur, that's really pleasant to hear." Aunt Lai smiled and called out to my belly, "Little Thurthur." I also smiled and said, "In a bit, we'll go to the maternity hospital for nutrient infusions." Aunt Lai said, "That's right, more infusions again. Oh, I really don't know what's wrong. No matter how much I nourish you, you're still anemic." I gave a bitter smile and said, "That's how it is." Aunt, after getting pregnant, I was diagnosed with severe anemia and malnutrition. I didn't have this condition before. Now, a large bowl of red dates every day and a weekly nutrient infusion have become mandatory tasks for me. Aunt Lai said, "Then finish your meal before you go. Going on an empty stomach isn't good either. I'll also prepare a hot pack for your hands." Thinking further, she added, "Call Dr. Chen first, tell him to prepare a room. The environment in the communal infusion room isn't good." I smiled and nodded. At the hospital, Chen Chi was already waiting for me. He was Dr. Kim's university classmate and our longtime good friend. There were many patients in the main hall, so he arranged for me to stay in the dispensary. He personally helped me with the IV drip and asked with a smile, "How have you been feeling these past few days?" I touched my belly and said, "The baby's very good." I also said, "Wasn't the receptionist at your front desk recently hired? Why did she change?" Chen Chi said casually, "Didn't you say she was being arrogant last time, so I fired her?" I said, I just mentioned it casually." You rascal." Chen Chi laughed and said, "What about me? I run this clinic. I hire whoever I want, and if I don't like someone, I tell them to leave. Besides, she had the audacity to look down on you. You've been my dream goddess for over a decade." I laughed and said, "We're both in our 30s and you still talk so much." But I felt a little guilty for the young girl who got fired. Finding a job isn't easy now. To be able to work at Chen Chi's clinic meant she was quite capable. Such a good job lost because of my careless remark. Actually, I didn't say much. It was just that the last time I came to the clinic, the new young receptionist seemed to know Aunt Lai. She said, "Auntie, are you Aunt Lai? Don't you remember me? I lived in the row of houses in front of yours. My mom used to dance with you." Aunt Lai hummed, pushing me forward. The young girl stared at me, pointing at me and saying, "This is Aunt Lai's." Aunt Lai said, "This is her new employer." The young girl's eyes blinked, seeming to show an expression of disbelief. That very day, I merely laughed with Chen Chi and casually mentioned this incident. I said, "Those who come to your clinic are either rich or noble. Someone like me, it's obvious at first glance I'm an employee. How could I afford a nanny?" I never thought that because of that one remark, Chen Chi would actually fire her. Chen Chi wagged his finger in front of me and said, "What are you thinking about?" I shook my head. Chen Chi said, "Why do you look so dazed? How's your sleep lately? Still having nightmares?" The nightmare Chen Chi was referring to was the one I had last month after my ultrasound. I screamed from a nightmare, scaring Dr. Kim. That night, he called Chen Chi to come over. Chen Chi, half asleep, said, "Why call me if you have a nightmare? Aren't you a psychologist?" Dr. Kim, on his end, asked him to come check on the baby. So, late at night, Chen Chi drove over to listen to the fetal heartbeat. I heard Than En Hai's heartbeat thumping rapidly on the machine, and I was still trembling, recalling everything from the dream. I dreamed that my child killed me. She cut open my belly, pulled out my intestines, and walked away without looking back, leaving me bleeding profusely on the ground, gasping for breath. I heard her laughter, so triumphant. As if I was being trampled under her feet. I didn't know why I had such a dream, and I didn't dare tell Dr. Kim about it. He would be scared if he knew. When they questioned me, I could only say, "I dreamed I was giving birth and it was so painful." At that time, Chen Chi told Dr. Kim, "I told you it was a psychological issue. 8 out of 10 pregnant women have such dreams. You clearly can handle this yourself." Dr. Kim just stared at me. I felt guilty and looked down. Dr. Kim pulled my hand up and said, "Don't worry, I'm here." Now, hearing Chen Chi mention this again, I sighed and said to Aunt Lai, "Aunt Lai, my hands are a bit cold. Could you pour some hot water into the hot pack for me? Also, my mouth is very dry. Could you go out of the hospital and buy me a drink?" After Aunt Lai left, I said to Chen Qi, "I want to tell you something." I pulled down my collar. Today, I had specifically worn a high-collared shirt to cover the choke marks on my neck. This morning, I had decided to tell Chen Qi about the faceless person. Yesterday, while waiting for Dr. Kim, I flipped through his psychology books. I thought perhaps I was suffering from prenatal depression. Comparing it to my hand, the marks on my neck could very well be self-inflicted. I had heard of suicides due to postpartum depression, but I hadn't realized there was also prenatal depression. I analyzed myself. Kai's death had dealt a huge blow to me, and then the baby came. Perhaps I hadn't had enough time to prepare mentally. Furthermore, the book stated that hormonal changes in pregnant and postpartum women could also cause emotional abnormalities. They would experience fear, anxiety, and even hallucinations. I always saw Kai. Before, I thought it was an unforgettable bond, so even though I was scared, there was a lingering affection in my heart. So I continued to evade these abnormal hallucinations until the situation worsened and the faceless person appeared. Dr. Kim also said, "Currently, more and more people suffer from mental illnesses. Perhaps I have a psychological problem." I showed Chen Qi the choke marks and told him what had happened these past few days. Finally, I told him not to tell Dr. Kim. His work pressure was already great enough. I didn't want him to worry about me anymore. Chen Qi listened silently, then looked at me and said, "Why don't I give you some medicine?" He added, "Don't worry, you can take it. It won't have any adverse effects." Chen Qi went out to write a prescription for me. He talked quite a bit. I felt a little tired, closed my eyes to rest, feeling the saline slowly drip into my bloodstream. At that moment, I suddenly felt a hand silently touching my face. That hand carried warm, moist steam. I slightly opened my eyes and saw it was Aunt Lai. Aunt Lai was tucking my hair away. Seeing me awake, she said, "Did I disturb you?" Then she handed me a cup of hot water and said, "I went out, then remembered that drinking cold water while on an IV drip isn't good for you. Luckily, I brought a cup with me before I left, so I filled it with hot water in the lobby." I took the cup, its warmth seeping through the glass to my hands. Through the rising steam, I noticed Aunt Lai's eye socket seemed a little red. I said, "Aunt Lai, what's wrong? Have you been crying?" Aunt Lai avoided my gaze and said, "It's nothing, just some dust in my eye." I kept looking at her. She sighed and finally said, "I knew I couldn't fool you. I was just afraid that if I told you, it would upset you and remind you of unpleasant things. I saw that young girl outside wearing a nurse's uniform." Aunt Lai didn't continue, but I understood clearly. She was thinking of Kai. Kai used to be a nurse. I still remember attending Kai's graduation ceremony that year. She stood there in her pristine white nurse's uniform, absolutely radiant. She winked at me, giggling, and said, "From today onwards, I'll transform from a devil into an angel." The first time I saw Kai, she glared at me and told me she came from hell and didn't need salvation from a heavenly person like me. So that day, when she first said she was an angel, even though she was joking, I couldn't help but cry. Aunt Lai also cried at Kai's graduation. She secretly came, hid to the side, and cried stealthily, her eyes red from crying. Just like now, seeing Aunt Lai's poignant reaction, I also felt uneasy, a gloom settling in my chest. This mood persisted until the IV drip finished. Aunt Lai helped me out of the hospital. Just then, someone in front was calling out, "Hey, hey!" I didn't react quickly enough until a man came up to me and said, "Are you Ms. Han?" That's when I realized he was calling me. I was stunned. Aunt Lai said, "What is it?" The man smiled and said, "Ah, someone named Mr. Kim asked me to pick you up." After saying that, he went and pulled open the back door of a van, saying, "It's not rush hour in the afternoon, and he was afraid you wouldn't be able to get a taxi." Aunt Lai turned and smiled at me. Aunt Lai said, "Dr. Kim is really thoughtful." I said, "Aunt Lai, what is this? Did you call Dr. Kim?" Aunt Lai looked at me and said, No, I didn't call." At this moment, I already had one foot in the car. Hearing that, I turned back suspiciously, but unexpectedly, someone suddenly pushed me from behind, and I immediately stumbled headfirst into the seat. The car door behind me quickly slammed shut. Outside, I heard a terrible scream. It was Aunt Lai's voice. The man quickly jumped into the car. At this point, I understood my situation clearly. Was I being kidnapped? But I had no way to call for help because a snow-bright knife was pressed against my throat. The man started the car very quickly, and my hands were already tied. All these events unfolded in a few minutes. From the corner of my eye, I glimpsed the young man holding the knife beside me, and my heart turned cold. The young man noticed me observing, staring at me coldly with his still childish eyes, and growled softly, "If you dare to mess around, I'll slit your throat with one knife." I suppressed my wildly beating heart, speaking in a low, almost trembling voice, "You guys must have the wrong person." The man in the driver's seat pounded the steering wheel and yelled, "Don't blame us, blame your man. As soon as that ugly woman died, he didn't want to pay. I still have leverage over him. He doesn't drink the offered wine, only likes to drink the punitive wine. Does he really think I'm a vegetarian? Does he really think I'm a vegetarian?" The man's words sounded extremely familiar to me. I suddenly remembered the threatening phone call I received a few nights ago. The man had said the same thing. The same agitated tone, the same voice. It was him, he was the one who called. This realization instantly sent my mind into disarray. I didn't know where they wanted to take me, or what they wanted to do to me. Just then, I heard the man in front suddenly roar in anger. "That stinking woman, where did she come from?" I followed the sound and looked. Not far in front of the moving van, a person was waving and directly rushing towards us. I recognized that outfit. It was Aunt Lai. My God, I was so panicked I didn't care about the fear and yelled, "No, stop quickly." The young man simultaneously shouted, "Dad, the red light is coming." The man snorted and said, "I don't think she has the guts," and sped up the car. My eyes saw Aunt Lai directly ahead, about to be hit. I choked back a sob and screamed, "Aunt Lai, get out of the way fast." Crash, crash, I don't know why, but the last sound remaining in my memory was always the sound of crashing. My head ached terribly. In a daze, I saw a pair of hands. I didn't know whose hands they were, silently reaching towards a silhouette. It was a girl's silhouette. Those hands unhesitatingly reached out to her, pushed her down, and then there was a heavy thud. After that, I saw Kai. I couldn't see her face, but I knew it was Kai. Kai fell down the stairs. I was so high up, yet I clearly heard the thud as she hit the ground, a loud crash, blood splattering. Finally, in the end, it was me. I couldn't recall the entire process, only remembering a crash from behind, and then the world plunged into darkness. In the darkness, someone stroked my face. That hand was warm and moist. Was it Aunt Lai? I struggled to open my eyes. After opening them, what met my gaze was a white ceiling. I looked around and saw an IV bag. Was I in a hospital? After a moment of thought, my head ached as if being sawed, hurting so much that I screamed out loud. From a distance, someone approached me with an urgent voice. "Are you awake?" This person had a scraggly beard and a hoarse voice. I stared for a few seconds before recognizing it was Dr. Kim. I looked at his blurred lips. Dr. Kim said, "Are you thirsty?" Dr. Kim poured water. I looked at him and instead suddenly asked a question. I said, "Dr. Kim, where is my stomach?" Dr. Kim's hand froze in midair. I kept looking at him like that, looking down at my flat body covered by a duvet, staring intently at him. I repeated this sentence in a dry voice. "Dr. Kim, where's my stomach? Dr. Kim, where's my stomach?" Dr. Kim slowly put down the thermos, slowly approached me. His voice carried pain. "Lulu, be good, we'll still have a child." His voice was so gentle, so meticulously careful. I stared wide-eyed at him, then suddenly turned over, tightly closing my eyes. I said, "No, I only want her, only want her." My body, for some reason, began to tremble uncontrollably. I gripped the blanket tightly with both hands, trying to control my voice. I said, "In less than 4 months, I could have seen her." "Lulu." Dr. Kim embraced me from behind and said, "Don't be like this." Held by him, I fiercely bit my lip. I told myself not to cry, not to let tears fall, because I couldn't accept this truth. But tears had already streamed down my face, as if this fate had already happened, irreversible, irreparable. The baby was gone, Aunt Lai was dead. Aunt Lai died right at the scene of the car accident, thrown dozens of meters. She used her life to block the car that was kidnapping me. Of the 3 people in the car, the man died. After hitting someone, the car lost control and crashed into the median barrier. They said his head broke through the windshield, and he died on the spot. The young man and I survived. I was in a coma for 2 days, and that young man would never wake up again. I don't know why, before I woke up, I had such a strong feeling of Aunt Lai. At that time, she had already left this world 2 days prior. I told Dr. Kim, perhaps Aunt Lai's spirit was worried about me. She came to see me one last time before leaving. She also hoped I would wake up soon. Dr. Kim said, "Don't think wild thoughts." He also said, "Don't worry, I will handle Aunt Lai's funeral well." 2 weeks later was my discharge date. Chen Chi drove to help. I was still deeply entrenched in grief over losing the baby. On the way, the 3 of us remained silent. Driving into the neighborhood, 2 police officers were waiting at the front door. I was a bit unhappy. What else could it be? They'd asked so many times at the hospital, why were they pursuing it at home? Dr. Kim tugged my hand and asked, "Officers, is there a problem?" One police officer said, "You are Dr. Kim, aren't you? There's a case and we'd like you to come to the precinct to assist with the investigation." Dr. Kim glanced at me. Chen Chi quickly said, "If you have something to do, go do it. I'm not working today and I'll look after things here at home." Dr. Kim gratefully patted Chen Chi's shoulder, then told me, "Be good, you rest at home. It's just a repeat of the questions. I'll be back soon." Dr. Kim left with the police. I suppressed the annoyance in my heart. As soon as I entered, I threw my bag onto the sofa and snapped. "How many times have they asked? Won't they just leave it alone?" Chen Chi added, "But I don't think the two police officers who just took Dr. Kim away were here for the car accident." I looked at him. Chen Chi said, "Both police officers just now had an accent from another region. Didn't you notice?" I was stunned. "They're outsiders, so what?" "Chen Chi, I'm just speculating. It's nothing for an outsider to be a police officer, but both officers who came here were outsiders, and they both had the same local accent." "Prove what? Prove what?" "Prove they're from the same hometown." "Yes, they're from the same hometown. My point is they are police officers from the same place. Police from a different region. Police from a different region. You mean, didn't you find their accent familiar?" I instantly realized. Wasn't their accent from Dr. Kim's hometown? You mean the police from his hometown also came here? Thinking about it, I also said, "But didn't our police already take on this case?" "No, Chen Chi, you just said they weren't here for the car accident, so what are they here for?" Chen Chi looked at me, paused for a moment, then said, "Actually, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I feel I should tell you." I said, "Tell me, what is it?" Chen Chi sighed and said, "On the day of your incident, didn't you mention your hallucinations to me before that? Afterward, I contacted a psychologist, and do you know what they told me?" I said, "Tell me what?" Chen Chi said, "They said that regarding your sighting of the faceless person on the second floor, they couldn't be sure. But you said the first time you saw the faceless person was at night, and you saw her going upstairs with Dr. Kim, right?" I said, "Yes, so." Chen Chi looked at me. "That doctor told me that if what you said is true, then it might not be that you're having hallucinations on your own, but rather that someone is guiding you to see that scene." I was startled. "Guiding? What does that mean?" Chen Chi said, "That doctor has done a lot of research on hypnotism." At Chen Chi's indirect answer, my heart sank. I immediately shook my head and said, "No, you're wrong, there's no way. Dr. Kim wouldn't do that to me." Chen Chi said, "I don't believe Dr. Kim is that kind of person either, but with what happened to you, as a friend, how could I not worry? So just consider it my own initiative. A few days ago, I intentionally asked a friend in the southern city to help investigate Dr. Kim's family matters in his hometown." I said, "You investigated Dr. Kim?" Chen Chi said, "We've known Dr. Kim for so many years, and his hometown story has always been a mystery. Not just with me, his friend, but even with you, he's always been cautious when talking about it. Don't you find that strange?" I lowered my head. "So what did you find out?" Chen Chi said, "Putting other things aside, you said Dr. Kim's niece is his sister's daughter, right? There is no such person." "What?" I was terrified. Chen Chi nodded at me. "At that time, I asked many times, and the answer was always that Dr. Kim's sister had no biological children, only had one illegitimate child. After she divorced, her ex-husband took the child, who is the young man who kidnapped you that day." "That's right. The police also said that I was kidnapped by a father and son. That man was the one who called to threaten me, Dr. Kim's ex-brother-in-law." I remembered that when the police questioned me before, Dr. Kim told me not to mention Kim Hong. Dr. Kim's intention was that this had nothing to do with Kim Hong, that the girl was still in school and shouldn't be implicated in this case. At that time, I didn't think much of it and listened to him. Now that Chen Chi had said this, I suddenly realized that Kim Hong's existence had always been a one-sided statement from Dr. Kim. I had never actually met the girl. Could it really be that, as Chen Chi said, such a person never existed? If there was no Kim Hong in this world, why would Dr. Kim create her? I remembered the first time I saw that terrifying faceless person. Was it really Dr. Kim hypnotizing me? Why would Dr. Kim want to scare me like that? My mind was a bit chaotic. Suddenly, I remembered something. I said, "No, Chen Chi, the man who kidnapped me called and kept saying he wanted to find Kim Hong." "There is someone named Kim Hong, you must be mistaken." Chen Chi looked at me. "Didn't you hear what I just said clearly? I said Dr. Kim doesn't have a niece, I didn't say there's no one named Kim Hong." I looked at him doubtfully. Chen-Chi dipped a little tea and wrote the character Hong on the coffee table. Hong, Kim Hong. My eyelids twitched. I looked into Chen-Chi's eyes. Chen-Chi said, "At first, I, like you, thought of Hong as in the color pink. If it's Hong, as in red, Kim Hong gives the impression of a girl's name. But what if it's Hong, as in Hung Roman 6, majestic?" I said, "You mean Kim Hong is actually male?" Chen-Chi erased the character Hong. His next words startled me even more. "You probably don't know that Dr. Kim isn't Dr. Kim's original name, do you?" My teeth almost bit my tongue. I said, "You mean Dr. Kim is?" Chen-Chi nodded. "Dr. Kim's name before college was Kim Hong. There's no niece. Dr. Kim asterisk is Kim Hong." This truth felt unimaginable to me, but what Chen-Chi said next surpassed my expectations even further. Chen-Chi said, "Before, Dr. Kim told us that his parents had died of illness years ago, but my friend told me that Dr. Kim's parents didn't die naturally. They were burned to death. My friend said that case was very sensational there that year because an adopted daughter set fire and burned her adoptive parents to death. The fire was set by Dr. Kim's sister. That year, she wasn't yet 18, and afterwards she went to a reformatory." Hearing this, I sighed and said, "No wonder Dr. Kim always hid it from me. This kind of family matter isn't glorious at all." Chen-Chi nodded and added, "Moreover, those two weren't his biological parents either." "What did you say?" Chen-Chi said. "Dr. Kim was also adopted by that couple." More precisely, both Dr. Kim and his sister were lured by that couple. Dr. Kim's sister wasn't severely punished because she revealed that the couple were human traffickers, deceiving and selling countless children. At the same time, this couple always abused their adopted children, and Dr. Kim's sister couldn't stand it anymore, which is why she set the fire. Chen-Chi sighed and said, "Actually, Dr. Kim is really pitiful. He doesn't want to admit he's Kim Hong. I think it's also because he just wants to escape that past." I unconsciously touched my belly. The small life that once existed in my womb made Dr. Kim cherish it so much. Perhaps it's also because of this reason that Dr. Kim has always longed for a true blood relative. But now, my nose began to sting. At this moment, Chen-Chi said, "I think the two police officers who just came for him are probably investigating the case of his adoptive parents from that year." Seeing that I didn't understand, he added, "My friend in the southern city whom I asked for help remembered me asking about Dr. Kim's family. So he called to tell me something, that someone sent an anonymous letter to the city saying that Dr. Kim's sister's case from that year was a wrongful conviction, leading to someone being unjustly imprisoned and killed. Did Dr. Kim tell you? His sister committed suicide." I shook my head. "No." Chen-Chi said, "I only found out about this yesterday too. I thought based on just one letter what police would reinvestigate an old case? Moreover, Dr. Kim doesn't want people to know about his past. I was hesitating whether to tell him about this. Who knew I'd encounter those two police officers at the gate just now?" I looked at Chen-Chi, silent. Chen-Chi patted me. "Don't worry, it's a case from many years ago. I think they'll just ask a few questions." I was also afraid you'd speculate, which is why I told you the whole story. Dr. Kim definitely won't tell you anything, but some things, can't be hidden." I nodded. "Chen-Chi, thank you." It was dark and Dr. Kim still hadn't returned. My body was still very weak. Even though Chen-Chi repeatedly told me to rest, I insisted on sitting on the sofa, waiting for Dr. Kim. I was very worried. After the incident, Dr. Kim told the police, because my sister died, all the money and property were left to me. The ex-brother-in-law didn't get any benefits and was resentful. He caused trouble at Dr. Kim's workplace. Many people there could testify to this. Perhaps failing to get benefits from his workplace, the ex-brother-in-law turned his focus on me, intending to use me to pressure Dr. Kim, which led to the kidnapping at the hospital. Dr. Kim's words might be true, but this truth didn't align with what I heard in the van that day. At first, I didn't remember, or rather, I didn't want to remember, because the situation at that time was too frightening, and I didn't want to think about it. But today, after talking with Chen-Chi, I suddenly remembered. That day in the car, the man mentioned that the bad woman just died. Dr. Kim then stopped paying, and he said he had leverage over Dr. Kim. It seemed he and Dr. Kim had a feud, and it wasn't about the inheritance, but rather that he had leverage over Dr. Kim. He was Dr. Kim's ex-brother-in-law, and the stinking woman, who died in his words, was very likely Dr. Kim's sister. He said that as soon as Dr. Kim's sister died, Dr. Kim stopped paying. So, while his sister was alive, Dr. Kim was always giving her money. Why did he have to pay? What exactly was that weakness that always kept him under someone else's control? Uncontrollably, I thought of his adoptive parents' case. His adoptive parents were human traffickers who abused children, which is why his sister rebelled and set the fire. But now there was an opinion that this case was a wrongful conviction. Chen-Chi also said the police wouldn't reinvestigate an old case based on just one letter, yet the police repeatedly came to investigate and even took Dr. Kim away. Could it be? I told myself not to think of Dr. Kim that way, but I continued to dwell on this matter uncontrollably. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. My mind couldn't fight the body's exhaustion. I didn't know when I had drifted off to sleep. I was woken by an argument. I opened my eyes and found myself lying in bed. Just then, the previously loud sound suddenly disappeared. I wanted to check if Dr. Kim had returned, but unexpectedly, as I pulled open the door, I saw a sight that made me gasp and shiver. In the brightly lit hall, the warm, white floor tiles were made even more striking by a puddle of dark red liquid. Was that blood? The source of the blood was Chen-Chi. Chen-Chi lay motionless on the ground, without a sound, not moving. A person stood with bowed head in front of him, but at a glance I recognized this person was none other than Dr. Kim. Seeming to hear a sound, Dr. Kim turned his head. I instinctively recoiled, retreating directly back onto the bed. I tightly closed my eyes, my upper teeth biting my lower ones, not daring to move. I heard footsteps gradually approaching outside, felt him enter. In the silence, his hand touched my face, his palm ice cold. All my muscles stiffened. I thought in terror, have I been discovered? Because I hadn't had time to close the door completely, leaving a small gap, but Dr. Kim's hand paused on my face for a moment, then left. Then I heard the sound of the doorknob turning. He seemed to be testing it, and then the door closed. He was gone, but I still didn't dare open my eyes wide because I couldn't believe everything I had seen. Dr. Kim killing Chen-Chi. Why? I must be dreaming. I told myself that, then fiercely bit my tongue. Hurt too much, but I didn't wake up. Was it real? Suddenly, I heard a car starting outside the house. Between the two distant villas, only Chen-Chi's car was parked in front of the house. Chen-Chi wasn't. I bravely got up, tiptoed to the window, and looked. Indeed, Chen-Chi's car was starting. The car drove past the window. Someone was in the driver's seat, wearing Chen-Chi's jacket, but I knew it couldn't be Chen-Chi. I watched the car drive away into the distance, my heart chilling in waves. I remembered not long ago, right in this room, Chen-Chi was peacefully with me. He told me that some people, even if you've known them for a long time, don't necessarily truly understand them. I asked, "Are you talking about Dr. Kim?" Chen-Chi didn't answer, only said that perhaps everyone has secrets they don't want others to know. Yes, secrets. The secret Dr. Kim had always hidden was his identity. Now Chen-Chi knew. Could it be that because Chen-Chi knew Dr. Kim's identity, he killed him? To that extent? Or was there something else I didn't know? Suddenly, something flashed in my mind. It was something I didn't want to think about, or rather, because I had suddenly witnessed a murder scene, I hadn't even had time to recall it. Now, this incident suddenly jumped out at me, making me immediately cover my mouth. I remembered. I remembered why I was initially sitting on the sofa waiting for Dr. Kim, then woke up in bed. In truth, if I could, I would prefer to never remember this. Prefer this memory to forever be a blank space. Chen-Chi helped me to bed. At that time, my heart was a tangled mess, my head heavy as a bucket. Because I learned something from Chen-Chi that Dr. Kim had always secretly hidden from me. My fetus did not die in the car accident. While I was unconscious in the hospital, my attending doctor knew Chen-Chi. He looked at my medical records and knew I was a patient at Chen-Chi's hospital. Once, the two coincidentally met, and he unintentionally mentioned me, saying that my child was aborted, that the baby had already stopped developing at just over 5 months and had long been a stillborn fetus. At that time, Chen-Chi told me that the baby had stopped developing on its own, unrelated to the car accident. It wasn't that I hadn't protected the baby well, so I didn't need to blame myself. After hearing that, I was stunned for a long time, then immediately cried out, "No way." Chen-Chi was very surprised. "You don't know, didn't Dr. Kim tell you?" I yelled excitedly. "How could that be? Stop developing? Last time during the ultrasound, I still saw her moving." Chen-Chi said, "There are many reasons why this kind of situation occurs." He also said, "Actually, I also find it very strange. Although you were frightened at the beginning of your pregnancy, you stabilized afterward, and your physical condition was good. Your 5-month checkup was excellent." Logically, Chen-Chi looked at me and asked, "Did you get sick this month? Did you come into contact with anything radioactive? Did you eat anything special? Did you take any medicine? Before, I always shook my head and said no. Until I heard the last question, I suddenly looked up. Medicine? I said. Last month, didn't I have a nightmare? Dr. Kim prescribed me a sedative traditional Chinese medicine. Chen Qi asked, what kind of traditional Chinese medicine? I anxiously went to get the medicine for Chen Qi to see. Chen Qi broke open a pill and sniffed it. I watched carefully from the side, my heart already in turmoil. I remembered these years with Dr. Kim. Because he was studying for his research and PhD, I had 2 abortions for him. But now I wonder if Dr. Kim didn't want those 2 babies genuinely just because of his studies and work. But this 3rd baby, he clearly showed so much affection for it. No, I remember now. From the beginning, it wasn't Dr. Kim, it was me. I stubbornly wanted this baby. When I found out I was pregnant, Kai had just died. I cried and told Dr. Kim, could there be reincarnation like this in the world? Will Kai be reincarnated as my child? Although this baby came unexpectedly, I stubbornly insisted on having her. Unlike the previous 2 times, when I only decided after discussing with Dr. Kim. So, was Dr. Kim's affection for the baby in my womb fake? Chen Qi also said that because of his special background, Dr. Kim had once told himself that if a child came into this world to suffer, it was better not to come at all. Perhaps he originally didn't want this baby. All his fake expressions were just for the moment. I was terrified of this thought of mine. Was I actually suspecting Dr. Kim? In an instant, I grabbed Chen Qi, who was still examining the medicine. I said, it's not this medicine. Dr. Kim knows I'm pregnant. He wouldn't give me something bad to take. Chen Qi looked at me. I avoided his gaze. Why are you looking at me like that? Only then did Chen Qi sigh and say, some people, even if you've known them for a long time, don't necessarily truly understand them. I unconsciously continued, are you talking about Dr. Kim? Chen Qi didn't answer, only said, perhaps everyone has secrets they don't want others to know. I understood. Chen Qi also suspected Dr. Kim. I didn't want him to say anything more because I was scared. So I said I had a headache. It was genuinely aching. Chen Qi helped me onto the bed and covered me with the blanket. I didn't want to face it, so I forced myself to sleep. This missing memory fragment had just been restored, and its restoration seemed convincing enough. I went to sleep. Dr. Kim came home. Chen Qi probably revealed his identity and even his suspicions regarding the baby's death. Perhaps because Dr. Kim didn't admit it, or for some other reason. They had an argument, which is why I heard arguing in my sleep. It must have been that. But what I hadn't expected was that Dr. Kim, the man I always thought was the one I loved most, my closest person, this good man actually killed someone. I commanded myself to be rational. I went to pull the door, and as expected, it was locked. I took out a bobby pin and quickly unlocked the door. Dr. Kim didn't know I knew this trick. Even I had almost forgotten I had this skill. This was something I learned with a girl back at the orphanage. Every time we were locked in a dark room, we successfully escaped using this method. I went to the living room. The living room clock showed 3 a.m. Chen Qi was gone, the bloodstains were also gone. The floor was still a bit damp, it must have been wiped. Suppressing my horror, I thought to myself, was Chen Qi taken away by Dr. Kim, taken away to destroy the evidence? I asked myself, what should I do now? Should I run away? Should I call the police? Should I report my own husband? Faced with this kind of situation, what should a good woman, a suitable wife, ultimately do? Let me teach you how. Suddenly, a sound came from behind me. I spun around forcefully, or rather, my body was violently pulled backward by some force. In front of me appeared a familiar woman, smiling at me. Isn't this myself? A hallucination? I told myself internally. Today, I've endured too much. Now, with this hallucination, I'm not even that scared. I lowered my head, telling myself not to look at the woman in front of me. As I looked down, I suddenly realized that initially I was wearing my loungewear. Now, I was wearing a blue tracksuit. This tracksuit looked very familiar. Where had I seen it? It was Kai. Yes, it was Kai. This was the orphanage uniform Kai used to wear. I had seen it not long ago. No, Kai left the orphanage a long time ago. Why had I seen this outfit not long ago? Not long ago. I suddenly remembered it was the faceless person I saw in my hallucination. She was wearing such a tracksuit. The sudden thought made me look up. Ah! I shrieked. The gentle-faced woman who had just been standing in front of me, the woman who looked exactly like me, had transformed into the faceless person from my nightmare. Her face was gaunt and purplish. Her features were horribly ulcerated. Like me, her mouth was wide open like a gaping hole. She was also shrieking. It turned out that what was in front of me was a mirror. It turned out that I was the faceless person. I almost jumped up when I woke up because Dr. Kim was sitting silently on the edge of the bed, looking at me. "What's wrong?" He came and took my hand. I choked out a cry, flailing desperately. Dr. Kim gripped my hand tightly, looked at me and said, "What in the world is wrong with you?" I was restrained by him, my hand hurt terribly from the pressure. He stared at me as if trying to see into my soul. That probing gaze made me sober up. I calmed down, looked around, and realized I was in the bedroom. How did I get back into bed? For a moment, I couldn't distinguish the situation. I took a deep breath, avoided Dr. Kim's gaze, and asked in a low voice, "Why are you here?" Dr. Kim said, "I just got back." Dr. Kim extended his hand to show me his watch and said, "You said you were uneasy, but fortunately, it's not too late. Look, it's only 9:00. 9:00. I looked at the clock suspiciously. It was indeed 9:00 p.m. I remembered seeing the large clock when I ran out of the room. It was 1:00 a.m. then. Could everything I just saw not be real, just a dream or another hallucination? I bit my lip, looked at Dr. Kim, and said, "I think I had another nightmare." Dr. Kim said, "Really? What did you dream about?" I shook my head and said, "I don't remember anymore." Dr. Kim said, "Why is your face so red?" After saying that, he reached out as if to touch my forehead. I quickly dodged and said, "I'm fine, but it feels a bit hot and my mouth is very dry." Dr. Kim said, "Don't move, I'll go pour you a glass of water." Just then, the bedroom door slammed shut with a bang from the wind, then bounced open again. Dr. Kim said, "This door seems to be broken, it won't stay closed." Hearing that, my heart suddenly stirred. As soon as Dr. Kim left the room, I immediately went to the door. I used my fingernail to probe the keyhole. Then I gasped, a cold breath. I felt something. I watched myself pull it out of the keyhole. It was a bobby pin. At this moment, I saw Dr. Kim standing in the living room, a gleaming object swinging in his hand. It was a knife. What did he want to do? Bang! I suddenly slammed the door shut and locked it. I locked Dr. Kim out of the bedroom, effectively locking myself into a dead end. Then I didn't know what to do. The room was so large but had no phone, I couldn't call the police. I ran to the window. Outside, anti-theft bars were installed. I couldn't climb out anyway. "Lulu, what's wrong? Is the door closed?" Dr. Kim was outside, twisting the doorknob. "Why won't it open? Lulu, open the door." Dr. Kim called for me to open the door, all the while twisting the knob and knocking. I heard the commotion outside growing louder, my heart filled with extreme fear. I rummaged through drawers, hoping to find some kind of self-defense weapon like the knife outside. Dr. Kim was calling, "Lulu, why aren't you answering? Has something happened?" Bang, he started kicking the door. I was so anxious I was about to cry. Crash, the door was finally forced open. I hid by the door, watching Dr. Kim rush in through it. What happened next was quick. I raised the scissors I found, closed my eyes, and stabbed with all my might. Thud! The sharp scissors plunged into Dr. Kim's back. I watched him freeze there, then immediately collapse forward. I froze for a few seconds, then immediately ran outside. There was no one on the suburban road. I desperately ran to the end of the highway. The wind was strong. I heard my own panting echoing in my ears. Then, far ahead, I saw a silhouette. Someone's coming. I gasped, lifting my feet and running towards that person. Unexpectedly, after only 2 steps, my waist was suddenly grabbed and held from behind. At the same time, my mouth was firmly covered. "Ugh!" I struggled with all my might. Unexpectedly, the person restraining me opened their mouth and said, "Hanlu, don't make noise, it's me." That voice was too familiar. I tilted my head and actually saw Chen Qi. I immediately said, agitated, "Chen Qi, why are you here?" "I thought something happened to you. Come here." Chen Qi pulled me into the shadows. I watched a bicycle ride into another fork in the road. At this moment, Chen Qi said, "You know now." I said, "I saw you fall in the living room." "Right, I saw you bleeding. Where are your injuries?" Chen Qi said, "On my head, but it's nothing, just a superficial wound." He also said, "He knocked me out." I woke up to find myself locked in the car with the air conditioning blasting. It was Dr. Kim. Because I asked him about the medicine, he wanted to kill me to silence me. The baby incident was his doing. I never thought he was so terrifying. Luckily, I woke up early and smashed the car window. Otherwise, I might have lost my life now. I thought you were still in the house, afraid something might happen to you, so I quickly came back to find you. I said, "I almost didn't make it either, he had a knife." Chen Qi said, "A knife? How did you escape?" I sighed. "I stabbed him with scissors." Chen Qi's eyes widened. "Is he dead?" I said, "No, not really." I said, "Chen Qi, let's call the police." Chen Qi looked at me and said, "No, we have to go back, quickly." Chen Qi dragged me, running towards the villa. As soon as we entered, we saw Dr. Kim already lying prostrate on the living room floor, gripping the phone receiver in his hand. Chen Qi took a long stride, kicked him over, then shoved something into his mouth and tied his hands. Dr. Kim groaned. I looked at Chen Qi, somewhat flustered, and said, "What are we going to do?" Chen Qi said, "Do you know why I didn't let you call the police earlier?" I said, "Why?" Chen Qi said, "Because we have no evidence. Calling the police is useless." I shook my head and said, "How can we not have evidence? You and I aren't evidence. I saw him hurt you and he even held a knife to me." Chen Qi said, "Mere words are baseless. We don't have concrete evidence. Do you understand what this means? It means you know he did bad things, and he knows you know. But you can't do anything to him, and the police can't do anything to him. And you're still husband and wife, you have to live together. Think about it, he's already held a knife to you. Do you still dare to live with a person like this for the rest of your life?" I stared blankly at Chen Qi. Chen Qi continued, "Moreover, you stabbed him with scissors. You say it was self-defense, but what if he says you tried to murder him? Even if the police believe it was self-defense, excessive self-defense still carries a sentence, understand? What do you think he was doing on the phone just now? He might have been calling the police to have you arrested." I said, "So what do you say we do now? Tell me." Chen Qi looked at me, paused for a moment, then said, "If we want to be safe, this person named Dr. Kim must disappear from this world." My heart trembled as I heard, "You mean?" Chen Qi said, "I'm saying, why don't we take advantage of him being injured now and just kill him?" After saying that, he actually picked up the long-handled fruit knife from the coffee table. Chen Qi said, "We should kill Dr. Kim to end this threat." But how could I dare to kill someone? What's more, this person was my husband. Even if he harmed my child and wanted to kill me, I still didn't dare, nor could I bear to take a life. I looked at Dr. Kim struggling on the ground and shook my head at Chen Qi. "No, we can't do that. We can't kill him just because we're afraid he'll harm us." Chen Qi said, "Are you still soft-hearted at a time like this? Is he worth it? All right, he hasn't killed us yet, let's not talk about us. But count how many people he's already killed. Your child, one person, and Kai, whom you guided before, that's two people." Hearing this shocking revelation, I asked Chen Qi, "What did you just say?" "Kai." Chen Qi looked at me. "Yes, Kai, the girl you like so much, was also killed by him." Chen Qi pointed at Dr. Kim. "Today, he exposed himself. When I first mentioned that I knew about the baby, he didn't realize I was talking about you, but instead brought up Kai. That's when I found out. It turns out he was having an affair with Kai behind your back. When Kai committed suicide, she was pregnant. He abandoned Kai, told Kai to die. That's why Kai committed suicide, taking 2 lives. I'd say his adoptive parents' death was also largely his doing. That's 4 people, no, 5 people. He's killed 5 people. This man is a murderer. Do you still think he doesn't deserve to die?" Hearing these words, I bit my lip slightly, my fingernails digging into my palms so hard they almost drew blood. A moment later, I heard my own voice tremble. "No." I looked at Dr. Kim. He was writhing like a worm on the ground, his face pale. The scissors were still embedded in his back. The back of his shirt was soaked with blood. Just like months ago, when Kai fell from the building, blood gushed from her back. Oh, Dr. Kim looked at me, then at Chen Qi, shaking his head and groaning in frustration. "What do you want to say?" I looked at him and laughed, and at the same time, tears slowly rolled down. I said, "You want to tell me that everything he said isn't true, right?" I stared at him, speaking each word. "Then what is * true?" "Kai." When I spoke Kai's name, my heart ached again. I said, "Tell me, was the child in Kai's womb yours?" Dr. Kim groaned indistinctly. I chuckled softly and said, "What? Can't say it. Let me say it for you. Kai's child was yours, wasn't it?" I pointed at his nose. "Dr. Kim, you fooled me so terribly, you caused me such immense suffering." I said through tears, "Chen Qi is right, you truly deserve to die." I held out my hand to Chen Qi and said, "Give me the knife." Chen Qi looked at me, then slowly placed the knife in my hand. "Oh," Dr. Kim screamed. I also screamed, "Are you scared? When you lied to me, why weren't you scared?" As I screamed, I held the knife with both hands and fiercely lunged. I fiercely lunged towards Chen Qi. Chen Qi was startled, instinctively raising his hand to block, but because he was unprepared, I still stabbed him once in the abdomen with the knife. He looked at the knife plunged into his abdomen in surprise, then stretched out both hands and pushed me roughly. I staggered backward, still holding onto the knife handle, which pulled out of Chen Qi's body as I retreated. Blood immediately gushed out. Chen Qi cried out in pain and fell crookedly to the ground. I also fell to the ground from the push. After a moment of blankness, I immediately scrambled up. I raised the knife again and lunged towards Chen Qi. Chen Qi, his hand bloody, grabbed my hand. But I refused to stop, using all my strength to try to stab him. But my strength ultimately couldn't match a man's. He kicked me, sending me tumbling. The knife also flew out of my hand. Chen Qi and I both went for the knife. I was a step slow. Chen Qi picked up the knife. I was about to dodge, but Chen Qi had already raised the knife and was stabbing towards me. It was too late. Faced with the screaming sharp knife, I instinctively closed my eyes. But the knife grazed past my face at the last second. Dr. Kim had moved his body, charging hard, knocking Chen Qi down. Taking advantage of this opening, I quickly stood up, casually felt for an object, picked it up, and aimed it at Chen Qi's head. The person who had just raised the knife once again brought it down forcefully. Crash, the object shattered, falling to the ground along with the knife in Chen Qi's hand. Then Chen Qi fell. I had smashed his head. I let out a breath, looking at the broken ceramic pieces scattered on the ground, mixed with Chen Qi's blood. This was when I was pregnant. Aunt Lai gave me a bodhisattva statue to bless me with peace. Now it lay shattered, exchanged for shattered flesh and bones. Did it truly protect my safety, just like Aunt Lai? Like my mother? Tears fell from my eyes. These past few days, I had always been afraid and confused. I kept wondering why but couldn't find an answer. Not until Chen Qi mentioned why Kai had committed suicide, did a large, dusty door suddenly open in my mind. Suddenly, I remembered who I was. It turned out that what I had always seen wasn't Kai's hallucination. What I had seen from beginning to end was *me*. I am Kai. I always thought I was Han Lu. That was my hallucination. Because the person who fell from the building and died that day wasn't me, but Han Lu. Ms. Han died falling from the building while trying to save me. I watched her fall, but couldn't grasp her hand that had saved me. I watched her gasp her last breath and die in front of me. Her eyes didn't even close. I don't know why this happened. It should have been me who committed suicide. After that, I became Han Lu. I genuinely thought of myself as Han Lu. I told myself I was Han Lu, Dr. Kim's wife. I remembered Kai dying, worrying that Aunt Lai had lost her daughter, so I kept her by my side. Was it I who worried about her? Actually, it was she who was uneasy about me. She stayed by my side, caring for me, protecting me until the end of her life. I hate myself. Why did I only remember now, and not when my mother was still alive? Her entire life, she was waiting for me to call her mom, but even when she died for me, I couldn't utter that single word. I walked towards Chen Qi. He lay paralyzed in a pool of blood, his eyes half closed. I had only hit him with a ceramic statue, yet it had injured him so severely. It's profoundly deep. In the netherworld, my mother is wishing me a little strength. She knows who harmed me. Half a year ago, why did I want to commit suicide? It was indeed because of Dr. Kim. Dr. Kim wanted to break up with me. I kept wondering why, even though I didn't need a title and was willing to hide in the shadows, he still didn't care about me. Why could Han Lu win his love? No matter how well I did, I still couldn't get an inch of his affection. But Dr. Kim didn't break up with me personally. Someone else relayed the message to me. This person was none other than Dr. Kim's close friend, Chen Qi. At that time, I was heartbroken to the point of despair. Chen Qi said, he sympathized with me, telling me that if a woman wants to keep a man, she just needs to cry, make a scene, and pretend to hang herself. Only when things escalate to a life-or-death situation will a man be scared. I didn't actually want to commit suicide, I just wanted to scare Dr. Kim. Who knew that by sheer ill fate, Han Lu would die? I remembered everything. At the same time, there were many things I couldn't figure out, but I was sure I couldn't trust Chen Qi again. He wasn't a good person. He knew very well I wasn't Han Lu, knew very well that my suicide attempt was just a drama I staged for myself, yet he was still constantly deceiving me, hoping I would kill Dr. Kim. I didn't understand why he wanted to kill Dr. Kim so badly. Maybe the reasons he gave were true, maybe not. But I couldn't trust him again, because I had trusted him wrongly once, which resulted in Ms. Han's death. How could I listen to him and kill someone again? I walked towards Dr. Kim and helped him untie himself. I said, "Are you all right? Let me help you call 911. Lulu," he called me. I gave him a bitter smile and said, "Don't call me Lulu, I remember now." Dr. Kim looked at me in surprise. I closed my eyes, not looking at him, and stood up to make a call. I picked up the phone and pressed the numbers several times, but there was no sound. I looked closely. The phone line was cut. I turned my head and suddenly saw Dr. Kim raising the knife, forcefully stabbing Chen Qi once, twice. I watched blood splatter, flesh mangled. "He's killed someone," I choked out a scream. "This is a hallucination," I heard such a gentle voice. "These are all hallucinations, believe me, nothing is happening." "Dr. Kim," I called out in fear, "is that you?" No one answered. Why, in my world, only I remained. I walked forward in the darkness, and suddenly saw a silhouette. I couldn't recognize who she was, but I was covered in goosebumps by this silhouette. I didn't know why I was so scared. I only understood that as long as this silhouette existed, I would be afraid. She couldn't exist. Couldn't exist. I screamed at myself. So I reached out my hand and pushed with all my might. The madwoman wasn't imprisoned in a jail, but she was still confined. She was held in a small room at a mental hospital. Every week, a gentle-mannered man would visit her on time, speaking many words to her. One time, during heavy rain, the man still arrived on time, leading to discussions among the hospital nurses. A young nurse said, "He came despite such heavy rain. Her husband is so good to her. She's so ill, yet he still cares so much." Another older nurse said, "That's not her husband, don't you know? She was the 13th zodiac sign who intruded into someone else's marriage." "Huh," the group of young nurses eagerly said. "Please tell us what exactly happened." The older nurse said, "I only heard rumors. This girl had a hard life as a child. She stayed in an orphanage. Do you think a child without parents overseeing them in an orphanage can study well? Later, she grew up to be a delinquent. Luckily, a very kind female social worker helped her, educated her, told her to go back to school, and even found her a good job." "That's right, she was also a nurse." "Huh, a nurse?" "Yes, anyway, after that, this girl was guided onto the right path by the female social worker. Who knew this girl might have been traumatized as a child, her thoughts weren't normal. She felt that the female social worker was good at everything, so she imitated everything the female social worker did. She learned the social worker's way of speaking, bought clothes similar to the social worker's clothes, and later even fell in love with the social worker's husband. After that, she actually managed to seduce the social worker's husband and got pregnant. "Huh, this girl is too much," a young nurse exclaimed. "Isn't this repaying kindness with enmity?" The older nurse said, "That's not all. The social worker, perhaps unable to bear it, later jumped off a building and died." The older nurse continued, "Perhaps after the social worker died, this girl's mental state really deteriorated. She believed that she was the one who died and transformed herself into the social worker. The social worker's husband is that man. He's a psychologist, but because he never had children with the social worker and this girl got pregnant, he really wanted this child. Taking medicine would affect the baby, so he indulged the woman's delusions. Who knew that later, even after the baby grew into shape, it was still lost. Do you know why it was lost? Why lost? Isn't that girl a nurse? It seems that when she was getting an IV drip at the hospital, she secretly injected some bad medicine into the IV bag herself to make the baby die in her womb." A young nurse covered her mouth and gasped, "What kind of illness is that?" It was her own child." Another nurse said, "She's mentally ill, she doesn't have normal thinking." One time, when our doctor was treating her and sedating her, I heard her scream loudly, "Why is it a girl? Why? Please don't enter my womb." And she was flailing her arms and legs. It was very scary. The older nurse nodded. "And then she also killed someone, didn't she?" The deceased was the man's close friend, an obstetrician. They say that when the girl was pregnant, she was getting IV drips at that doctor's place. She took advantage of no one being around to secretly add medicine to the IV bag. She thought no one saw her, but she was caught on the hospital's camera. The doctor knew her man, so he didn't expose her. He only told her man. Unexpectedly, she overheard him, went mad, and killed that doctor. Her man was also injured and almost died. The older nurse suddenly stopped there because the female patient's family member had, without them knowing, appeared in a secluded